Hi and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Mike, and this is the third video in this series of mini tutorials on getting the most from your tools in Photoshop. Tips, tricks, hidden features, how and when you would use each feature, etc, etc. So what we're going to do is hop straight in. The subject of today's tutorial is the lasso and the selection brushes, which are contained within this icon here, or alternatively the shortcut is L. As with other tools, if you hold down Shift and click the shortcut, it will cycle through the other subtools that are available there. So we got the polygonal. I'm just going to say the poly lasso or the polygon lasso, the polygon tool. That's what it's going to be. So there's the polygon tool, and the lasso tool is magnetic lasso tool rather is the third one. And the next one is the selection brush. So cycling back to the ordinary lasso tool, this tool is one of many that will allow you to freely create selections. Photoshop has a huge amount of options when it comes to making selections. And while I find and know a lot of the more complex selection tools that you can use for masking and making selections, I use the lasso tool a lot. Especially for compositing. You can make very quick, rough selections with it. Saves a lot of time, and you don't have to spend ages drawing around objects or people, and speed helps to keep the creativity flowing, essentially. So all you do is click and drag, and whatever shape you make, it will create a selection based upon that. To finish and to complete your path, you don't have to cycle all the way back around to where you started. All you can do is just release your pen at any point around, and it will automatically join it together using the shortest possible route, in this case obviously a straight line. So you can go as close or as far away as you want, release, and it will complete the selection. There's no option to make the geometric selections, essentially. So if you need to make a perfect circle, then just hop into your marquee tool and use that instead. Hold down Shift to constrain to a perfect circle or square. Lasso tools, much more rough selections. As with all other selection tools, if you hold down Shift, it will add to the selection. If you hold down Option or Alt, it will subtract from the selection. And if you hold down Shift and Option or Shift and Alt, it will intersect. So it turns into a little cross there. Easier to show than to explain. It excludes everything outside of your selection, keeping what's inside. So if I wanted to get rid of this bit here, I would just draw around it, let go, and it would get rid of everything but keep the selection within. That's pretty much all there is to the basic lasso tool. The toolbar at the top here, which usually has all of your options, is essentially anti-aliasing, which is, I mean, I can't think of a time when I've wanted my selections to be rougher, so I always leave that on. So that stays on for me. Select and mask will bump you straight into the advanced masking modes, which we will cover in a separate video. But moving on to the second, well, the sub-tool essentially, the Polygon Lasso, draws in straight lines. So you click, raise your pen, click again, raise your pen. You can obviously do this with a mouse, although if you're doing any kind of level of compositing and image editing, you should really use a tablet. Just use a tablet. Using a mouse is like drawing with a bar of soap. Or a hockey puck. It's not fun. So yeah, you won't know the difference until you actually have one and you just be converted. So it makes it so much more precise, so much easier, so much faster as well. It doesn't really have any downsides. So Wacom, Huion, XP Pen all do brilliant tablets, and they're not expensive really anymore. You can pick up some very, very good deals on them. But yeah, back to the tutorial. So the Polygon Lasso works in straight lines. Quick pro tip, you can press backspace or delete to delete your last point, and you can keep working your way back through them as well. So like a step backwards for this. So if you make a mistake, you can just hit delete or backspace. You can close your selection by hovering over to your start point, and you see a little zero or circle appear, so it's completing the shape, essentially. If you click, that will complete your path for you and turn it into a selection. Or, unlike the lasso tool, if you hover and just press enter or return, it will complete the path for you in a straight line anyway. So that's two different ways to do that. Once again, that's all there is really to this tool. So enter to close the path. Command and D will deselect your selection. Shift Command and D, or Shift Control and D, will reselect your selection. And Command and A will select everything. And moving on now, so Shift and L again to move into the next one, the magnetic lasso. This used to be incredibly useful before select and mask was a real thing, and before Photoshop really stepped up its selection game. I used to use this a lot, especially for products and stuff like that. Because it's when you have areas of high contrast, it sticks to the edges as you draw. It's not perfect. So the more you head out from the sides, the more it gets confused, and it used to be very useful. There's a time and a place for using it. It's not now. Don't use it. I'm only joking. So obviously you have your adjustments up here. You can adjust the width of the line and the calculations. You can take that up higher or lower. The contrast that it looks for between the edges, like this is very easy around the edge of the basketball here. However, around the edge of the tail or underneath of the tail, more difficult. You can already see that it's missed out a bit of the selection here underneath. If I zoom in a little bit, see there, it's had a bit of trouble because white and grey. Obviously, between black and white, it's fine. Perfect selection. That's no problem at all. But there are much more useful tools, selection tools and masking tools that you can call on to make selections like this. In a pinch and for speed, fine. But you've got your magic wand and everything as well, which do just as well, maybe even a little bit better. All the calculations that go on behind the scenes with tolerances and everything with your magic wand give you a better selection than this. So width, yeah, we've covered. Contrast, we've covered. You can either type in, or if you click on the name and drag, it will actually move up. Good little tip on any of these as well. You can do precise selections, or you can type in the number that you want. Frequency is basically the amount of points it's gonna put around the edge. So if I go up to, let's say we go right the way down to, let's say 21, and we draw around this, you can see it's just putting just a couple of points. It's being quite conservative with the amount of points. If I deselect that and I take the frequency all the way up to 100, it's just putting points everywhere. It's trying to be more precise, obviously, but it's done a better job. Once again, though, there are better tools that we will cover, and we will be covering in future videos as well, that will make much more sense. And at the end of this, what I'll do is I'll do a masking overview video as well, where I'll go through a load of different images and I'll say why I've chosen certain tools for doing certain jobs, why I would use that particular lasso, or why I would use that particular masking, why I've selected a masking, or why I've used channels instead of refine hair, and all that stuff. We'll visit that as the series progresses. So that's the magnetic lasso covered. What you can do, let's just shift back to the basic lasso. With your selection, what you can do is you can right click, which will open your little contextual menu here, where you have your usual inverse, or the shortcut is Shift, Command, or Control and I. So what that'll do is invert. So everything that's inside your selection is selected, and if you invert it, everything outside of your selection is chosen. Easy way to show this, if I've created a layer here, I just choose a basic brush with red and 100% flow, and I draw inside my selection. It's only the things that are inside the selection that are affected. If I invert my selection, Shift, Command and I, or Shift, Control and I, it's everything outside of the selection that will be affected. Very, very fundamental, this. Very, very useful. you'll see why as we progress. But Shift Command or Shift Control and I. So I'm going to undo that. You can also, if we right click, feather your selection, which will make the edges much softer. So let's say we feather it by 30 pixels. In fact, let's not do that because I'm inverted on the selection. So let's invert that. Let's right click, let's feather by 30. And now if I fill with this, Shift and F5, foreground color, then you see it's done a nice soft edged selection. Whereas if I hadn't feathered, let's say that, and I fill that with my color, very hard edged. Undo. You can right click to enter the select and mask, which is also up here. Once again, you can save your selection, which is important if you've made a very complex selection. If I spent ages selecting Ember's outline and I accidentally click and the selection has gone, then it's gone. So you can actually save your selection as circle, new channel, and then hit OK. So we type in circle. That's now saved that as a selection. So we can go up to here, we can go to select, and we can load selections as well. So if I deselect that, select, load selection, find our circle. Okay, there we go. So you now don't have to worry about deselecting or losing your selections by doing that. We can right click, we can convert this to, well, we obviously have all of our usual ones. We can transform the selection. Free transform will transform everything that is below it. So Command and T or free transform is basically transferring everything that's underneath it. So let's move this selection over. Command and T will actually affect your pixels underneath it. If we escape and we right click, transform selection, it will allow me to edit the actual selection without affecting the pixels. Very useful. You can hover in the corners, and if you hold down Command or Control, it will allow you to warp selections as well, so you can actually tweak the shapes of things a little bit too. You can obviously scale up or down. If you click, it will constrain the proportions, or you can hold down Option, Alt to transform from the center. You can hold down Shift, which will allow you to not constrain the proportion. So you can edit it and squash the selection, hover outside to rotate it, etc., etc. So, and that's transforming your selection. Too many keys. So just experiment. Finally, we'll move on to the selection brush. So Shift and L to move through to this. This is your selection brush. Once again, not a tool I find myself using a great deal. However, I'm including it here for completeness. It's very similar to just pressing Q and heading into the quick mask workspace in which you can draw with your brush. So black will add a mask, white will remove a mask. So you can make very nice, precise selections with this, especially if you zoom in and you can alternate between your colors, nice soft edge brushes. Wouldn't advise doing this with a mouse, obviously, but pressure sensitive tablet, you can get very good selections with this. Now, if you press Q again, you'll jump back into your ordinary workspace and it will have made that as a selection. Once again, has its uses. Select and mask and everything has kind of replaced this a little bit, but I do still use it every now and again. The selection brush, however, I don't really tend to use. It's exactly the same. It draws on a mask, essentially, just in a different color. So you can hold down Option to subtract from your selection as well. And once you're done with your selection, obviously you press Shift to add to it and everything like that. So you can make your brush bigger or smaller. If you hold down Control and Option, or Control and Alt, click and drag left and right, that will increase or decrease the size of your brush. Pulling upwards will make your brush softer. downwards for more hardness on the brush edges. This is one of the most important Photoshop tips. I use it all of the time. It's one of the most important things I ever learned next to masking in Photoshop. So let's make the brush a bit smaller. Let's make it a bit softer. And then you can, obviously add to your selection. Why you wouldn't just use your ordinary masking tools, I don't know. Or the quick selection tool. With the quick selection tool, you can actually use your lasso and everything as well to fill in, rather than having to rely on all the brushing that I'm doing now. When you jump into any of your other lasso tools, so let's go back into lasso, it will convert that to a selection for you. Just use quick mask. I mean, I can't just press Q and head into quick mask, because that way you can use your selection tools. You can fill in, Shift F5 to fill with your foreground color. You can feather your selections. I can't really see any use. Feel free to leave a comment. If you found an amazing use for this selection brush, please do let me know. I just think there are better options to use, especially in quick mask. You can always tell you're in quick mask because your icon goes peach, by the way, or pink. Q to jump out of it, and it'll make it a selection. Last quick pro tip: if you jump into your lasso tool and you are making a selection, if you hold down Option or Alt and lift your pen, it will temporarily switch to the Polygon Lasso tool, allowing you to add straight lines to your selection. Click, click. When you release Alt, it will resume normal lasso behavior. It's a massively uncomfortable shortcut. I think it takes a lot of brain power for me to figure out when I'm going to use that and where to start pressing it to time it right. So once again, rather make a selection and then just add to it in the usual ways. So drawing, hold it down, space to remove, add to your selection, etc. Once again, so many ways that you can use the selection tools. The last two tools, just part of the family of selection tools that you will have uses for each and every one of them, apart from the selection brush. Maybe not. But yeah, just experiment with what works for you. But for more precise ones, we'll be covering in select and mask. And when we start touching on masking, that's when it will really start to get to more advanced stuff. That brings us nicely to the end of this third features tutorial. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you in advance for any likes and subscriptions. It's very much appreciated. Till next time, have a good one. Bye-bye.